So now we're going to talk about the anatomy, just the nuts and bolts of the Jang. We're going to start with the handle assembly. You can see that it moves up and down. You can adjust it based on your height. Also, within the handle, there are other ways you can adjust it. The handle goes back and forth, so you don't have to walk on your bed while you're seating. You can offset the Jang, so you can push it up the row while you're walking in the aisle. You can also make the Jang handle higher and lower from this adjustment, as well as the angle. There's another adjustment here where you can change the length. You can also take this whole section off for storage. And here is a holder for the sprockets, which it's nice to be able to have them on the tool when you're not using them, when they're not in the gear housing. Now we're going to spin the Jang around to look at the depth, setting of the depth. It's easier to see on the other side where the gears are not in the way. So here there's a bolt that gets adjusted with a size 13 wrench. You turn, there's both a bolt and a nut, and you want, the nut makes sure that the bolt doesn't move. So you need to loosen the nut as well as the bolt. And that sets the depth of this shoe. You can set a line here, a string across the bottom, so you can see how deep this goes. I would also recommend practicing at home. You'll see on the shoe that there are some lines here, and they're not universally compatible at the same depth on every shoe. So you're going to want to take notes on where you set it and what works well for you, because it's not uniform. Then you're going to, after you set to the depth that you want, you're going to want to tighten it. First the bolt and then the nut. And you're going to want to make it pretty tight so that it doesn't slip while you're seating. There's also this wing nut here. You can turn it, this one's fresh out of the box, so it's a little tight. But what that adjusts is the placement of the hopper mounting base. And that can move back and forth. It can offset your seating about a 1/2 inch to each side. It works really well in the multi-row Jang seater for adjusting where you want things. Here it's useful if you're trying to seat around drip tape or staples that are in the ground, or if you have a predetermined furrow but want to seat to either side of that furrow. We do that sometimes here. One thing you want to be careful of with the wing nut, if that is something that you use a lot, it can loosen while you're seating, and that will mean that your hopper is moving around and your seeds might be coming out not exactly where you want them. So you might end up having to just tap it a little bit to get it tighter. Sometimes I can't tighten it enough with my hand to keep it from coming loose while I'm seating. So here is where the gearing is housed. It's held on with these 2 little bolts. And what we do, we'll talk about which gearings one might choose and this chart a little bit later. I like to make sure to not lose these. I put them right in the lid so that you can be sure that you've set them down. Also, all this stuff comes out and so that you can adjust which sprockets you use. They kind of only go in one way because there's a flat side to ensure that they get good purchase. The Jang comes with sprockets with different numbers of teeth, and that is the number that's written on the sprocket. There's a 9, a 10, 2 11s, a 13, and a 14. And the ones that you'll choose are written on the chart on the front and impacts the speed at which the hopper is turned, and so the speed at which the rollers are turned, and so how frequently the seed is laid down. Now we're going to look at the hopper. The hopper has a lot of ways to be adjusted. It just goes into the Jang in one direction. It sits with these little holes. It slides into a groove, and then this pops it in and out. This lever. The hopper itself has a way to measure seed size. You can put them in the lid, and what fits into these holes will help you figure out what size hole you need, which will help you choose what roller to use. When I'm using the hopper, I like to put the lid down, and then anything I take off the hopper, I put in the lid to ensure that I don't lose it. Things fall out of pockets. You think you put something in a pocket, but you didn't actually. You put something down on a cart or on a truck, much more likely to lose it. So this is held together with the same kind of little screw that the gear casing uses. They go right in there, and then it opens. Inside, there are a few different ways to adjust the hopper. There's a brush here that you can raise and lower with this wing nut. Most of the time, you'll probably want your brush to be flat up against your roller. It really depends on how your seeds sit in the roller hole. If you're seeding something like beets or chard, which is a very round and irregular shaped seed, it's much more likely to stick up over the top of the hole in the roller. And so you might need to lift your brush to enable the seed to move through. Otherwise, the purpose of the brush is to keep extra seed from sitting in the holes and too much seed coming out at a time. When I seed baby leaf, I like to choose a larger hole so that I can fit more seeds per hole and lay down more seed per inch in the field. I'd rather do that than lift the brush, because that can let quite a bit of seed through unintentionally. The other thing we have in here for adjustment is the felt. The felt keeps the seed in the hole of the roller as the roller is moving. So between the seeds sitting in the holes, and then it rolls all the way around to the bottom before it falls out the bottom of the Jang, the felt keeps it in place. It works really well for things like brassica seed, which are smooth and round. It works not as well for like lettuce seed, where the seed actually gets caught up on the felt. So I usually take the felt out when I seed lettuce. I also use the XY roller, so that actually holds that lettuce seed in there pretty well until you're ready for it to fall out, and then it doesn't get caught up on your felt. To take the rollers on and off, we have this sprocket that has a post on it, and it's held on with a pin. You just pull the pin out, put it in the lid, and remove it. You can see that it's flat on one side, and that helps for it to gain purchase on the roller and move through. So you take your sprocket with the post, you put the roller in first, and then there's a flat side in the roller, just like there's a flat side on the post. You make sure they're lined up, and then you put the pin back in. So as the seed moves through the roller and out of the hopper, it travels through the seed guide funnel and comes down and out into the soil. This funnel does come off if you're trying to clean out thoroughly between seeding. And it only goes back in one way, so that makes it really easy. Now, when you close this back up and you put it back in the base, you want to make sure that the sprocket is engaged with the chain. It's easy to put it in on the wrong side, and then it's not turning anything when you're pushing it, and you're not actually seeding anything. So you want to make sure there's a chain here, and you want to make sure that the sprocket is engaged with the chain. It can also be tricky sometimes to seat it properly, so you want to make sure that the teeth are actually sitting in the chain, ready to turn the train. Sometimes it can go in at a funny angle and not engage correctly. So there are two wheels. There's the drive wheel and the press wheel. The drive wheel, you can see as it turns the gearing. It has these teeth to get purchased with the soil so you can be sure that you're going to get a good turn as you roll through. The rear wheel, the press wheel, pushes everything down to ensure good seed to soil contact. And then this in the back helps to, if you're seeding in soil that maybe is a little wetter than you might prefer and it starts to stick to your wheel, this will help scrape it off as the wheel is going around so that you're not pulling up the seed you already put down. The angle of this that scrapes the soil off can also be adjusted up and down. The shoe has a spring-loaded covering attachment, and as you roll through the soil, it pulls the soil onto the seed to cover it, and then the wheel presses it down. Adjusting the depth will determine how much soil gets put on top of your seeds. There's a screw here that can be adjusted to change the angle at which the soil is thrown onto the seeds. So sometimes I usually practice on the edges of the beds by rolling it through and then kind of digging in a little bit to make sure that the seeds are at the depth that I want them to be. It's infinitely adjustable. That's what's amazing about the Jang.